Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this fifth session in Track 1, where we'll hear from Emily Hamstra from the network of the National Library of Medicine with an introduction to PubMed Central. My name is Michelle, and I'll be the conference committee member moderating this session. Before I hand things over to Emily, I just want to quickly point out that generally we'll answer questions at the end. I will be monitoring the Q&A, and you can ask questions at any point, and if it seems time sensitive to whatever Emily is sharing with us, I may share it at that point, but otherwise generally we'll answer questions at the end. But again, submit your questions using the Q&A button at any time. That button is at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And then please use the chat for comments and courteous conversation. And with that, I'll pass things to Emily.
Thank you, Michelle. And I want to thank you all for being here. I recognize some familiar names in the participants, and it's good to see you all. My name is Emily Hamstra, and I'm the Outreach and Access Coordinator for the network of the National Library of Medicine, Region 5, and I'm based in Seattle. And I'll be talking today about a free resource that's available through the National Library of Medicine, PubMed Central, otherwise called PMC. But before I do that, I want to tell you about where I work. So I'll start with this image on the right. And this shows the relationship between the network of the National Library of Medicine and the NIH. So the National Institutes of Health is the nation's research agency, and it has 27 different departments and centers. And one of those is the National Library of Medicine. The network of the National Library of Medicine is an outreach program that's funded by the National Library of Medicine. And it's a program that's run regionally. There are 7 different regions throughout the US. And each region is hosted in a health sciences library. So I'm based in Region 5, which is hosted at the University of Washington Health Sciences Library. And I imagine most of you at this conference are in either Region 4 or Region 5. So the network, we provide training, and we also provide funding related to health information, outreach, programming, and research. And you can learn more about our work at nnlm.gov. So there are 2 parts of the presentation today. First, I'm going to explain the connection between PubMed Central and 2 other resources that are provided by the National Library of Medicine, PubMed and Medline. And that's going to give you some context for the second part of the presentation, where I'll give you an overview of PubMed Central. So there I'll cover what PMC is, what is in it, and I'll do a really short demonstration at the end. I'm going to be focusing on the content that's in PubMed Central, so kind of what you would expect to find within the resource, more than how the resource itself works. Okay, so let's get started with this first part. So to give you context for PubMed Central, I want to talk about how PubMed, Medline, and PubMed Central are all related. They all overlap and intersect, and knowing how those work together can really help you use them more efficiently. So tell me in the chat, have you ever used PubMed, Medline, or PubMed Central? And if you have, which one have you used? Or which ones have you used? All 3? Medline, excellent. PubMed. Very good. Medline and PubMed. Okay, good. So some of you are already coming to this with some familiarity with these resources. So PubMed is an abstracting and indexing database. It includes 32 million citations in the biomedical literature. It's free to search and use PubMed. It includes Medline and most of PubMed Central. It does not provide access to articles. It links out to a publisher's website or to PubMed Central for access. And so it's important to note when you're using PubMed that access to full text articles can be dependent on your institutional access to journals and your journal subscriptions. Medline is the indexing that's applied to a specific subset of journals within PubMed. Journals are selected for Medline based on a recommendation of an NIH chartered advisory committee. And these are really, Medline is medical journals specifically. There are 5,200 different journals indexed in Medline. And a key feature of Medline indexing is medical subject headings, or MESH. And those are applied at an article level. So if you're ever looking in PubMed and you see MESH terms like I have highlighted in green here, this shows you or tells you that this is a Medline journal. And if you ever search in PubMed and use MESH while you're searching, that's going to limit your results to those Medline journals. And PubMed Central, or PMC, it's a repository of full text content. This includes articles, manuscripts, historical content. There's preprint articles in there and a lot more. PubMed Central has 7.6 million documents in it. Most of it is included in PubMed. So when you search in PubMed, most of PubMed Central will be in your search results as well. But there are some things that are out of scope for PubMed that are included in PubMed Central. And those are things like reviews, essays, some historical content. And if you're interested in a specific journal and are wondering where it's indexed and how it falls into PubMed, Medline, or PubMed Central, you can check the National Library of Medicine's catalog, and that provides that information. So it'll give you the dates and the resources that it's indexed in. Okay, so I'm going to spend the rest of the presentation on PubMed Central. But before I do that, are there any questions that have popped up so far, Michelle?
No questions that I see.
All right, I'm going to keep moving forward then. So what is PMC? PubMed Central, or PMC, is a full text archive or repository. And researchers who receive funding through the NIH are federally mandated to deposit articles associated with their research into PubMed Central. It's free to access all content in PMC, and similar to PubMed, everything here is related to the biomedical and life sciences. And PMC is maintained by the National Center for Biotechnology Information, or NCBI, at the National Library of Medicine. And hot off the press, there were some recent updates to PubMed Central. The interface was updated on Monday. So on the left, you'll see what the interface used to look like. And then on the right is the new interface. So updates include this newer interface. And if you go to the PubMed Central website right now, you'll notice that it looks really similar to the new PubMed. This new interface is mobile friendly. Some other improvements that have been made are the help documentation was improved to make it easier to access and understand. The article display was also updated. It has a much cleaner look. And note that the URL that you use to access PubMed Central is the same, so there are no changes there. So PubMed Central includes 7.6 million full text documents from the 1700s to the present. Content includes articles that have been provided by publishers and scholarly societies, author manuscript deposits. I mentioned earlier that if a researcher has NIH funding, they're required to submit their article to PMC. And a lot of those deposits are author manuscripts. There are preprint articles in PubMed Central and digitized content. And the digitized content is mainly historical. And in the next few slides, I'm going to cover these types of articles in more detail. So the main type of article that you're going to find in PMC is articles that are from publishers and scholarly societies. So over 5 million of the 7.6 million items in PubMed Central fit in this category. Many of these are open access. However, be aware that not all articles in PMC are open access. The article on the screen, it shows that the article is open access with the CC BY license, and that license allows you to distribute, remix, adapt, and build on the material in any medium or format, as long as you're giving attribution to the authors. If you're specifically interested in finding open access articles in PMC, there's an open access filter in the search results page, and I'm going to show you a demo of that at the end of the presentation. So the National Library of Medicine is really careful about what's included in PubMed Central. They have a very clear scope for the journals that are included. A few of the selection criteria include that the journal must be peer-reviewed and have a peer review policy, has to be related to the biomedical and life sciences. It has to consist of a certain type of article, and those are listed there. And then the affiliations of the editors and the authors have to reflect the journal's scope and demonstrate editorial independence and diversity. The journal must be responsible for its own peer review and editorial processes. And additionally, it has to have produced and published a minimum of 25 peer-reviewed articles before it's considered to be included. It must have a registered ISSN, and they must follow current publishing best practices. So they're really careful about the quality of what's included here. When the National Library of Medicine receives a request to include a journal in PMC, they review the journal's policies, they look at the article content for scientific rigor, they review the quality of the writing, the formatting, and the organization. Again, they look at the editorial board and the authors to make sure that they're qualified to be publishing within the field. And importantly, they look at the publication schedule to make sure that that's consistent and reliable. And then after that initial review, they monitor for changes in publishing quality. And you can always, if you notice some changes in a journal that you're accessing through PMC, you can always report that to the National Library of Medicine as well, using the help desk. So the next type of content that's included in PubMed Central is author manuscripts. And most author manuscripts are deposited in compliance with funder requirements for public access. And these are a final version of the article, so it's been peer reviewed, it's been accepted for publication, and it just hasn't been published in the journal yet. So the author manuscripts might be subject to an embargo period, kind of depending on the rules of the journal. And the record that you see in PubMed Central for an author manuscript will provide the full text of the manuscript, but then also link to the final version of the article. So you can see I have it highlighted in green here. And then that link to the final version takes you out to PubMed. It's not unusual that the final version will be behind a paywall. So as a side note, if you're searching in PubMed rather than PubMed Central, and you see a link to the full text from PubMed Central and from a journal, if you click the PubMed Central link, it might take you to the author manuscript, while the journal link might take you to the final published version of the article. There are a growing number of preprint articles in PubMed Central, and this is a pilot program that grew really quickly in the early days of COVID-19 because researchers needed to share their critical research really quickly, more quickly than our our publishing processes allow. The pilot has been limited to articles related to COVID-19, but it's likely to expand. And these articles are clearly marked in PubMed Central. So you're going to see this green box saying this article is a preprint. It has not been peer reviewed. So this is an early draft. It often hasn't been submitted to a journal yet. It's just some initial research that needs to get out there. If you're interested in learning more about this project, the National Library of Medicine has a great tutorial on the process for an importance of providing preprint articles. And I'll share that link at the end. And the final category of content in PubMed Central is digitized content. And this is mainly historical content. Much of this has been made available to the National Library of Medicine through collaborations with Wellcome Trust, with JISC, publishers and other academic societies. And much of this is digitized content in the public domain. There's some orphan works in there as well, and government publications. I have a few links here for learning more about PubMed, Medline, and PMC, so you can access those using the links under Access. In terms of training, the National Library of Medicine provides a series of classes called How PubMed Works, and we'll be offering those in April. So there are 4 sessions or 4 classes in that series, and you can register for those on our website. And all of our classes are free. We also have the preprints tutorial that I mentioned. And then there's some recommendations for support pages here as well. And here are a few articles that were helpful to me while I was putting this presentation together, and my contact information. But before I take questions, I'm going to go over to PubMed Central and just do a quick demo. So again, if you haven't used PubMed Central in the last week, it's going to look different. I'm just going to do a quick search here. Let's do vitamin C. So PubMed Central, similar to PubMed, when you do a search, it takes your search terms. And if you look down here under search details, you'll notice that I didn't search, the medical term here. I just searched the common name vitamin C, and it automatically included that term. So PubMed and PubMed Central use a process called automatic term mapping to map your term to the medical term. I teach a whole class on this if you're interested. April 15th is the next session of PubMed automatic term mapping. But this is really helpful if you don't have a medical background and you're searching some of these medical databases. On the left are different ways to filter your results. So I mentioned open access earlier. You can limit your search results to articles that are open access. You can also limit by funder if that's something that you're interested in. So if you're working with a researcher and maybe they're working on a grant, you might help them find other research that's been funded on that same grant. PubMed Central can be really handy for undergraduates as well. So if you're at an institution that doesn't have a lot of medical journals, but maybe you have an allied health program and you're working with a student who needs just a few articles, this is a great place to come and look for articles because everything you're going to be able to access here is going to be full text. You can also take a look at retracted articles. That's a popular search in PubMed Central as well. I'm going to check in on the chat and see if there are any questions.
I don't see any questions so far. I did let everyone know that the presentation slides will be in the conference repository later, since you've provided a lot of links.
Great.
I mean, they would be anyway, but I'm just letting them know that they'll be able to access those links.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, you can also email me too if you want a copy of the slides. And if these are useful to you in any way in your teaching, you're welcome to reuse them as well.
We'll give folks a couple minutes in case any questions bubble to the surface.
Has anyone tried out the new PubMed Central? I'm curious if there are any reactions to it. Yeah, I think it looks nice too. It's looks much more modern than the previous interface.
So Carol has a question. Carol asks, what are the retracted articles? Are they articles where the study has been discredited?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So there are articles where the study has been discredited by other research. So yeah, interesting. Thanks, Carol.
That is interesting. So now I know something I'm going to go look up.
Yeah, and you can search. Let me close out of this. You can search for articles that haven't been retracted too. So if you go to retracted, it adds and is retracted to your search down here under search details. If you switch that to not, then it's going to give you all of the articles on that topic that haven't been retracted. So if you want to get rid of any of those results that might not be as credible or might be confusing to a student, you can remove those. This can also be handy too in talking with students about the research process, because you have so many different types of articles here. You have preprints that are available before they're even published in a journal. You have authored manuscripts. You have final open access published journals, and you have retracted journals as well, or retracted articles.
Well, I don't see any other questions, and folks know how to get in touch with you. So I just want to thank you, Emily. I found this to be very useful because I have used PubMed, Medline, PubMed Central, all sort of in a surface level. So this was a good, especially the explanation of how they overlap and how they're different was very helpful to me. And now I can see falling down the rabbit hole too of looking into retracted research. That would be a strange obsession. But anyhow, thank you very much, Emily.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.